Sunil Lulla of BARC, BARC India joins us now. Sunil, fantastic to have you back. Sunil, last time when we interacted with you was exactly 1 month after the lockdown, where the entire India was in a lockdown mode. Now we are speaking to you when the city where we live in is in lockdown and rest of the India is opening up. So in terms of viewership trends, now that gradual economic activity has started, what has BARC registered and what has BARC observed?
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me again. As you know, at the peak, which was somewhere around in March, television viewership had spiked up by 42% when compared to the early viewing of January 2020. Now it's about 24% higher than that period, and we are observing a gradual decline since its peak in March to now. And when we segregated the markets that we would still call as, cities, towns, and districts which are contained or which are under significant lockdown versus those which are opening up. In the markets which are opening up, daytime television viewing, afternoon viewing has started coming down, and the intensity of viewing has come down. But it's not yet anywhere close to what was last year's average or January. It's still much higher up. Schools are shut, kids are at home, they are watching everything. And a large part of India is still working from home or is at home. There is also a significant population which is now on the road, walking or in a car or a truck or a train, going back to their hometown. So there is a disruption of people, but at the end of the day, television is still holding strong in terms of viewing. Advertising is in the opposite direction. So the best time in terms of viewership, the worst time in terms of advertising. If you compare this to a period of January, 30% down. If you compare it to last year when there was an IPL, 36% of the volume of advertising has come down. I think this gives you, in a sense, great viewing, lowest commercial ebb of the industry. And as you know, there is very limited original programming. Some channels have experimented with artists and stars shooting from their home and trying to make the programming interesting or different. News channels have created special symposiums and webinars, which they both run online as well as on TV. The GEC channels brought back movies to kind of boost their viewing, to boost their viewership over there. Some of the channels brought in earlier reruns. We saw Doordarshan becoming the #1 network, Rama and Mahabharata, great classics of the late 1980s, which have now come and has given viewership. Doordarshan is big spike. We are now seeing some of these mythologicals lining up on private broadcasters and again giving viewership bumps. We saw some of the OTT series lining up on TV and have done well. Obviously, if you don't have original programming, channels are going to experiment. And I think there's a lot of innovation that is ongoing over there.
What is the right way of looking at advertising, Sunil? Something which clearly I must qualify is of interest for television channels and for news channels. Is it advisable to strip off the IPL and then look at advertising?
So even if you do that, see, IPL is a high-priced item, right? So the volume to price ratio is highly indexed towards the price. Much lower volume, much higher value. And last year, when it was broadcast on the Star network, it was different because I think it came across 17 channels, whereas on the Sony network, it was across 6 or 7 channels, if I'm not mistaken, right? Not all the games, but many of the games. So if you strip off IPL, what is really there on air? One is what we call the essentials baskets, which is food, hand wash products, to be very clear about it. Some amount of laundry products. A lot of it is food and beverages, which is big. 50% of it is the basic basket over there. Services could be online banking services, could be online entertainment services, online education services, which is the third category. The second big category is social advertising. A large number of advertisers, at last count more than 110, if I'm not mistaken, had actually added the protection from COVID communication into their main theme of communication. So trying to catch on to the watchful consumer who's looking for suggestions and tips. I think if you're a brand that is trying to retain its brand imagery and recall, there cannot be a better time to advertise. if you don't have supply chain and you're going to use advertising purely to fuel sales, obviously you're not going to be on air and you're going to save the gunpowder for a later day when things start normalizing. FMCGs, they've moved around their basket based on their supply chain and how they see things moving in those markets over there. But across the board, it's largely the essentials basket, which is still advertising.
Okay. My immediate follow-up question, Sunil, is that what about specific regional and the news markets? What are the trends there?
So news was a big gainer, right? Average of 2019 news viewership is 7%. Peak COVID viewing period is 21%. It's now 15%, which is double. Okay, it's significant. We should not just look at a number of 15. The category has doubled its viewing and is now held on to that for a number of weeks. So there's a lot of interest. The interest has come, if I remember the numbers correctly, almost 20 or 25% of the viewing of news is now coming from people who did not see news last year, right? So there's a large part of news which is being seen by people who weren't paying as much attention to it. We saw in the early period of March and April, people were snacking in and out of a number of news channels. That's now come down to their usual 3 or 4 channels that they used to watch. It had gone up to 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 channels that they were snacking into. So you're seeing some reduction over there. News continues to be holding steady. FCT or advertising on news continues to be stable. It's much lower than it's been in January, but it still continues to be stable. In the regional side, I think the GECs in the south, the general entertainment channels, all the 4 southern states, has seen a significant drop in advertising. The movie category in the south has also seen a significant drop, but the viewing of the movies category has been higher, and as a consequence, some advertising has shifted there. The segmented or niche channels like music, infotainment, knowledge, etc., they did have spike in viewing. They continue to have spike in viewing, but no increase in advertising. That is uniformly flat everywhere.
Sunil, hi there. Good afternoon. Let's get in your, readings as well as analysis from the report on the smartphone consumption, because that continues to remain steady. Unlike TV, which has seen a bit of a drop, the smartphone consumption continues to remain around 4 hours per day, as per the latest findings. Give us a sense as to what is the breakup in terms of time spent for the users per week from pre-COVID to what it is now, because obviously things and categories like video conference, saying gaming, that is all seeing quite a stellar growth, right?
Yes, it has. So what's interesting, don't look at it from a device or a medium point of view. Look at it from the consumer's point of view. An average consumer is spending almost double their time between the smartphone and the TV, right? So if you actually add up the two, it's almost 7 hours versus the earlier 4 hours. So it's almost double the time that they're spending between these two forms of information, entertainment, or communication. So let's understand what's happening. First of all, TV's drop is that at its peak, it went from an average of 3 hours, 45 minutes per individual per day of TV viewing, went up to about 4 hours, 48 minutes at its peak, and is now at about 4 hours, 15 minutes. So it's still half an hour more per day per person, which is significant on TV. So I wouldn't knock it off. On smartphones, the things that have grown is news, a little bit of movies, catch up on what you may call as digital streaming videos. In the early period, it was a lot of catch up on TV, but as programming on TV, as original programming on TV started dropping, it went to movies. A big consumption over there, very large consumption over there is video conferencing or using the phone for chatting and for using it for messaging. Another big increase at one point of time was the exchange of money. So, when people are shopping or buying or transferring money, that's seen a bit of a growth there. So the notable thing is, audio as such dropped significantly on the smartphone. So people used to use their phone a lot to hear radio or to listen to music, and that has dropped significantly. The OTT play has certainly gained, both the ones which are sponsored by advertising and those which are subscription supported. Both have seen growth. And there people have gone for a variety of shows across different formats. There was interesting viewing of certain shows which were in English and dubbed in other regional languages. So you see a spike over there. Some of the Indian classics also have seen a spike over there. The big thing that the phone is being used for younger people is gaming. So if you go to 15 to 24, the big growth over there is gaming. So I think that industry should see a flip somewhere if this trend continues. I think if you take away the two trends, so to speak, of the two mediums, television has once again established that it is the screen of the household. There is certainly an increase in consumption of content and data on the smartphone. So I think both of these will coexist, and a function of how we progress further when new programming comes in will determine how consumers adapt to different forms of entertainment or information.
Oh yes, indeed. That will be very interesting to see. But you did say that TV consumption and the smartphone growth continues to coexist. We've been speaking as well with a lot of veterans within the media industry, and you spoke about the problem with advertising, that while the viewership has remained healthy, the advertising growth hasn't quite played up. What's the sense that you're getting as well in terms of going back to the normal levels that we were accustomed to? Do you suspect that it could potentially get worse as time goes by, or are we likely to see things normalize fairly soon on the advertising front for TV?
And people I speak to are also optimistic, but I think the reality is, unfortunately, does not support our optimism. The reality is that a lot of businesses have seen a cruel impact and will continue to see a cruel impact as we progress. Even as the lockdown or lifts off or people can go back to work, we know that millions of people have gone away to their villages and to other parts of India. So getting back those people to restart the factories, rearm their services will take some time. I think, unfortunately, the fear of the virus and the impact of social distancing will play a role in our life, whether it comes to production, whether it of TV shows or movie shows or digital content. It will play a role in life in terms of people wanting to spend less money and to save and to be conservative. I think if you look around the world, in China, the term called revenge shopping took place, where people went out and splurged. In some other markets, we are seeing clear signs where consumers, including India, where consumers are indicating that they will spend more on hygiene products and hygienic services. I think a big takeaway for brands is about trust. And those that can communicate trust and can continue to hold the trust of their consumers will certainly see benefits. Do we expect there to be growth in this year of the TV advertising? No, I don't think so, not at all. We will see a drop versus 2019 volumes. We will certainly see a drop. We'll certainly see a drop even in digital versus 2019 volumes.
That is the stark reality. Sunil, always a pleasure chatting with you. Many thanks for joining in, observing those interesting trends when it comes to television consumption as well as for the smartphone.